I have my own thoughts, but because they are my own thoughts, I don't want to give them ideas. So I'm going to hold on to my thoughts and watch how this shakes out. I have my own thoughts about how this is going to shake out, and as I said, I don't want to give the other side the power over what I'm thinking. So I guess the question is, with all that's going on, do we think that Paramount maybe bowed to political pressure, or was it just business, or is it a little suspect at the timing? I mean, or is it all of those things?
I think two things can be true at once. You cannot ignore the politics of the moment, that this is a president who's made clear how he feels about certain people in the media, and there's this multi-billion dollar, $8 billion merger that's pending that the government can weigh in on. And then you also have to look at the economics of the television industry. The fact that shows as iconic as The Late Show have a fraction of the viewership that they had even 20 years ago. This report was that he was losing about $40 million a year while commanding Colbert a salary of $20 million. But my question is this.
Even Trump's casino didn't lose that much.
My question is this.
The story kicked off with the unexpected passing of Stephen Colbert, a towering name in the world of late-night television. Reports revealed that his show was abruptly pulled from the air after years of turning comedy into a nightly battleground of political jabs and lectures. This wasn't the result of any shadowy government crackdown or sweeping censorship. Instead, it came down to the cold calculations of ruthless decision makers. Year after year, the program was bleeding close to $40 million. Meanwhile, the hosts of The View, especially Sunny Hostin, were in full-blown panic mode, tossing out wild claims about looming dictatorships and threats to democracy, all while avoiding the harsh truth staring them in the face.
I think that we don't know if it's purely financial. I mean, if you look at some of the numbers, it could be financial. And I don't know that it's purely political. It could be. But my concern is if it is political, then everyone should be concerned. People on the right should be concerned. People on the left should be concerned. Because it's very clear that if it is political, this is the dismantling of our democracy. This is the dismantling of our Constitution, right? And so the First Amendment is the First Amendment for a reason, and that is freedom of the press, freedom of speech, freedom to speak truth to power. If that is taken away, if the comedians are being attacked, then that means our Constitution is being dismantled.
That's right.
This wasn't just another piece of television gossip. It played out live on national TV for everyone to witness. The tension was palpable, fueled by the fact that this show remained one of the last major daytime talk programs clinging to an outdated political storyline. Producers, pundits, and critics alike scrambled to craft their own explanation for how a giant like Colbert could crumble. Was it the work of a heavy-handed assault on the press, a disastrous financial misstep, or an act of political revenge?
That means the very rubric of our democracy is being dismantled. And I think every single person should be really, really concerned about it. I'm thrilled that Senator Warren, Elizabeth Warren, Senator Bernie Sanders is asking Skydance, is asking for answers whether or not this was political. The Writers Guild is actually asking the Attorney General to look into this situation to find out if it was political. And if we find out it is political, what are we going to do as a country? We must protect our Constitution and we must protect our democracy. I think this is bigger than just the cancellation of a television
I think it's
show.
great they're
Before we continue, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us grow and share more stories that keep you hooked. All right, let's get back to it.
Linear TV is going to be a niche option in 2029. That's not that far off right now. So as you watch the ad revenue, it dropped.
What do you call it? Linear TV?
Linear TV.
Is that what we're on?
Yes.
But we're on streaming, Hulu, and Disney+.
That's why I'm saying I got nothing to hide here, guys. In 2018, advertising has dropped by 40% since 2018 as ad revenue moves to digital content and non-traditional media.
As chaos unfolded, it became clear this was no longer just about Stephen Colbert. The real story was about what happens when the media bubble bursts, and those who once saw themselves as untouchable are forced to face the reality that the audience has moved on. Amid the frantic speculation, one person dared to apply plain, straightforward reasoning. While the rest of The View scrambled for explanations, Alyssa Farah Griffin arrived without tears or theatrics. She simply laid out the facts, calm, direct, and unmistakably clear. No matter how famous a Hostin may be, a network will hit pause, at least temporarily, if a show is bleeding $40 million a year. That's exactly what happened to The Late Show. But Joy Behar still managed to drop one of the most tone-deaf lines of the evening as she wrapped up her remarks. Trying to be clever, she quipped, "Even Donald Trump's casinos didn't lose that much." The energy in the room vanished instantly. Halfway through, it seemed to dawn on her that she'd only made Colbert's situation look worse, far worse. In contrast, Alyssa Farah Griffin stayed composed and avoided cheap shots. She stuck to the facts. The truth was simple. Despite Colbert's $20 million paycheck, the show was drawing only a fraction of its former audiences. Add to that a team of more than 200 overworked employees, and the result was a disaster in the making. Yet no one else on the panel wanted to face that reality. Instead, they reached for more dramatic, fear-inducing narratives. That's when Sunny Hostin broke the silence, gearing up for what would become one of her most exaggerated rants yet. True to form, she took an emphatic stand, delivering what she clearly thought was an urgent message to the entire country. In Sunny's view, The Late Show's cancellation wasn't just a financial matter, it carried grave political consequences. She warned that if the decision became politicized, we could be witnessing the end of our democracy. Yes, she actually said that. To her, firing a Hostin whose show was losing tens of millions somehow signaled the erosion of the First Amendment. She spoke of free speech, a free press, and the duty to speak truth to power. Listening to her, you'd think Colbert had been arrested and locked in a dungeon instead of simply taken off the air for poor ratings. The most astonishing part? She meant every word. There was no wink, no attempt at humor, just her firm belief that this was part of a political scheme to please Donald Trump's critics. Ratings? Irrelevant. Financial losses? Unimportant. Sunny hinted at a creeping authoritarianism targeting entertainers, framing the cancellation as nothing short of a constitutional crisis, rather than admitting the show had failed to connect with viewers. To Sunny, Colbert was more than a late-night Hostin. He was a courageous symbol of resistance against hidden forces stifling free speech. Meanwhile, the rest of the panel sat in awkward silence, either wincing or staring in disbelief. But Sunny wasn't done. Her tirade quickly swelled beyond one show's fate as she began warning that the very foundations of democracy itself were now under attack. Sunny claimed that Senators Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren were demanding answers. She insisted the Attorney General had been convinced by the Writers Guild to investigate whether Colbert's firing was politically motivated. It seems she truly believed the Department of Justice should halt all other matters to probe the cancellation of a struggling TV show. Based on her words, you'd think the show's end was on the scale of Watergate. She repeated that if this was a political issue, people from both the left and the right should be deeply concerned. Sunny acted as if Colbert's cancellation was a blatant constitutional violation and painted him as a national hero. But the simple truth, it was something she either chose to ignore or maybe never fully understood.
The difference here is corporate media overlords that have other interests, and that's why new independent media is one of the rising places that people consume content, because you don't have people making those
Just
decisions.
add something about the money, the numbers here, because we're talking about the $40 million, and a lot of people are reporting that it was the advertising revenues went down. But if you look at the estimates from Edo Ad Engage, late night broadcast TV shows took in $150 million over the 12-month period from July 21st, 24 to July 20th, 2025. That is up 6%. Up 6%,
Not if the show costs
not
more
down.
than that.
And so
Whoopi,
the
let's-
Late Show with Stephen Colbert was also estimated to have earned $59.9 million in ad revenue. It is down 2% year over year, but it's still almost $60 million. And so
The truth was simple. The show just wasn't drawing viewers anymore. And when a program loses money, it's only natural for it to end. That's how the business works. But Sunny and many in her circle refuse to accept this reality. They act as if everyone in the country shares their views. They believe every joke about Trump hits like a bomb and every criticism of Republicans carries immense weight. Since they can't admit they're out of touch, they convince themselves it must be a conspiracy, a political attack on their world. And that's exactly the problem. People like Sunny Hostin are so disconnected from everyday life that they don't see how worn out the average American really is. Most folks are tired of every late night show turning into a nonstop therapy session about Donald Trump. They're done with the constant political snark, hiding behind every punchline. What they really want before bed is a laugh, not a lecture. Because of this fatigue, no one stops to ask why a show like The Late Show is failing. They don't wonder if it's lost touch with its audience. Instead, they cry censorship. They scream fascism. Every setback becomes a dramatic Shakespearean tragedy about democracy slipping away. Sunny leads the charge. Every time something doesn't go her way, she acts like the country is on the brink of collapse. Immigration enforcement turns into kidnappings. Refugee detention centers become concentration camps. Now, the cancellation of a failing talk show is spun as an attack on free speech. It's always the same story, overblown, exaggerated, and never taking responsibility for their own mistakes. In their world, being wrong simply isn't an option. The real reason people complain, spin stories, and claim America is falling apart is far less dramatic. Fewer viewers wanted to watch Stephen Colbert recycle the same jokes night after night. Sunny thought she held the moral high ground, but her spell was broken by someone at the table who stayed calm and grounded, Sarah Haynes. Cutting through the chaos, Sarah delivered a dose of reality. She highlighted the rapid decline of traditional cable and network television. By 2029, linear TV won't be dead, but it will become a niche industry, much smaller than before, she explained. There was no conspiracy in that statement. It was simply the result of changing viewing habits and advancing technology. She even mentioned the 40% drop in traditional TV ad revenue since 2018. Advertisers aren't disappearing, they're shifting to social media, streaming platforms, and digital outlets because that's where the audience has moved. When Sarah said linear TV, even Sunny paused, confused enough to ask what the term meant. Right then, the irony hit hard. The very person warning of democracy's collapse didn't grasp the basic media landscape she was critiquing. Sarah was clear. It wasn't political, it was business. TV is evolving. People aren't glued to their couches watching network shows like before. Audiences have changed. But Sunny and her crew cling stubbornly to a different narrative, one where any failure can only be explained by the machinations of a powerful, sinister, reactionary figure. Even though she clearly didn't fully get it, Sunny tried to lean on statistics to back up her point. She shared projections for ad revenue, claiming that from July 2024 to July 2025, late night shows generated roughly $150 million. Proudly, she pointed out that during the same period, Stephen Colbert's show pulled in nearly $60 million in ad income. By her reckoning, that meant the show was doing well, but it was clear she either didn't understand or simply refused to grasp the crucial difference between revenue and profit. Just because a show earns $60 million doesn't mean it's successful. If producing that show costs $100 million, you're still facing a $40 million loss. That's not a win, it's a disaster. The other panelists exchanged incredulous looks, as if someone was bragging about a big purchase and assuming that meant they'd succeeded. It was a basic concept, something you'd learn in your first week running a lemonade stand, that completely flew over Sunny's head, despite her frequent boasts about her intellect. The woman at the center of this whole mess, who ignores the enormous costs of running a team of over 200 people just to recycle the same political jokes every night, believed that ad revenue alone was proof of success. That moment revealed not just a lack of understanding, but highlighted the very reasons legacy media is declining, while audiences increasingly seek genuine conversations elsewhere. Unaware of how badly she was undermining herself, Sunny struck the final blow when you thought things couldn't get worse. She jumped back into the conversation and, trying to sound knowledgeable, insisted that since the show brought in $60 million in ad revenue, it simply couldn't be failing. She bragged about a 6% overall increase in late night ad sales, as if that somehow made up for the late show's massive yearly losses. But she was clearly struggling to handle numbers she didn't truly understand. The entire room seemed to wince in disbelief. Here was a woman sitting on national TV, constantly touting her education and expertise, yet unable to grasp the basic difference between revenue and profit. It's like boasting about making $500 at a bake sale while ignoring the $1,000 spent on frosting and flour. What you spend matters far more than what you bring in. What's surprising is that she actually thought she was winning the argument. She truly believed that tossing out statistics would back up her point in every situation. But anyone with a bit of financial sense could see the real issue clearly. Sunny's words were all over the place, not to defend Stephen Colbert, but to protect herself. Colbert was no longer the main focus. This was about bracing for when the media turns on her. Deep down, whether she admits it or not, she knows the writing is on the wall. She knows people are tuning out and that traditional TV is struggling. She realizes that political rage masquerading as comedy just isn't working anymore. Even worse, She senses her time on The View might be coming to an end, not because of politics or censorship, but because the show is losing its audience. So she clings to these emotional, exaggerated tales about democracy dying and authoritarian regimes taking over, not necessarily because she believes them, but because it's the only way to avoid facing the truth. Maybe we're just no longer entertaining. What's even more discouraging is how the panel let her go on like that. No one challenged her. Maybe they were just being too polite. Maybe they were too afraid to speak up, or maybe they just stopped caring. Meanwhile, the rest of the world had already moved on to YouTube, podcasts, and independent creators who don't need $100 million to speak honestly. All the while, Sunny kept complaining about free speech. Deep down, she knows this too. So she doubles down with wilder theories, louder declarations, and fancier words. She can't stand the idea that her time in the spotlight might end quietly with a polite, "We're going in a different direction" from a network executive. No fireworks, no fanfare, no glory. Mainstream media is stumbling precisely because of the gap between Sunny's exaggerated numbers and the real state of the industry. The world has already changed, even if people like her cling to outdated models and pretend everything's fine. Then Alyssa dropped a harsh truth Sunny clearly didn't want to hear. Traditional media simply can't keep up anymore. Not with bloated, overtly politicized shows costing hundreds of millions a year, not with the rise of independent producers, and definitely not with audiences whose tastes are shifting fast. The difference is clear. Today, people want something real. People have simply had enough of polished, corporate-approved propaganda dressed up as edgy content, but ultimately predictable and insincere. Even if the material is rough around the edges or unrefined, audiences crave something genuine, something that feels real. More and more, they're turning to independent voices who speak openly and honestly without needing a massive studio, a multi-million-dollar budget, or a team of hundreds. But Sunny can't come to terms with this shift. Deep down, she knows the truth. If her show ever gets canceled, it won't be because of some grand conspiracy or political silencing. It will be because advertisers walked away and viewers stopped tuning in. Yet she builds an emotional fortress around herself, insisting it's all a Trumpist attack, clinging to that narrative because the hard numbers leave her with no other defense. The audience is shrinking and the excuses are running dry. This is the harsh reality facing legacy media today. The landscape is changing faster than some are willing to admit. Traditional TV and big budget productions can no longer hold the attention of viewers who crave authenticity and real connection. The future belongs to those who adapt, those who embrace new platforms and honest conversations. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. I'd also love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below and let me know what you think. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.